All right, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to the Bristol Town Council meeting of July 17th. If you could all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. Before we go through the agenda, I'm going to start as where I think we'll probably end, which is 4th of July was another spectacular year. I know we're going to say this a few times, but I think it's worth starting the meeting this way to say just phenomenal job by the 4th of July committee, the efforts and the energies that they give starting the 5th of the year before and already started the 5th of this year. They do an outstanding job. But I can't stop there, and I'm never going to get everybody, but I am going to say to the police department, to Chief Brian, how about that, huh? Good for you. Congratulations. Well deserved, sir. So, to your department, to the men and women of that department, to the men and women from the other departments that kept us safe throughout all of that, thank you. To EMS and the fire departments, to DPW, to all the volunteers, we say thanks. And I know we're going to go through that at the end, but I wanted to start off the meeting. It is one of the integral parts of what makes Bristol, Bristol, and it was another outstanding job. Thank you. Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Town Council. The first item on this evening's agenda is the consent agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
The next item is item A1. It's submission of minutes of June 26, 2019.
So moved to approve.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
The next item is ordinance 2019-09. That's item C1. And this is for certain amendments to the motor vehicle and traffic code to designate two no parking areas.
Motion to approve the first reading of the no parking area on Franklin and Summer Street.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
The next item is item E1, and this is the private investigator licenses renewals for 2019-2020. You have a recommendation provided by the town administrator and interim chief of police.
Based on the recommendations of the chief and the administrator, I move to approve it.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
The next item is item F1, and this is the petition of Chip Cavallaro and Stephen Brigidi, with it giving an address of 10 Franklin Street, request council consideration for solution to the termination of the commercial trash removal.
Welcome.
Good evening,
Good evening.
Bristol Town Council. I'm Chip Cavallaro. My wife Jennifer and I own the Beehive Cafe and the Beehive Pantry on Gooding Avenue, both of which are obviously located in Bristol. Thank you for letting me speak this evening regarding the announcement that the town of Bristol wishes to stop the trash collection service provided to the businesses within the town of Bristol. First, I'd like to thank the individuals of the Town Council that have reached out to further discussion on the topic. I sincerely thank you for those of you who have taken the time to talk to us. Once again, the business owners of Bristol have been blindsided by the recent announcement in the Bristol Phoenix that the town is no longer willing to pick up commercial garbage. And once again, this plan was put in motion without any outreach to the business community. What is more frustrating is the fact that once the announcement was made, it became clear that there was no real plan in place. Additionally, after several conversations with members of the town administration, it was clear that there was no concept of what the impact of not picking up the commercial trash would have on the business community itself. There are multiple implications that need to be reviewed prior to enacting this proposed policy. Due to the configuration of the building that the Beehive Cafe is in, I am physically unable to install a dumpster. Any of you are welcome at any time to come and take a look at what we have to accommodate our trash. I am one of 5 businesses that share a 12 by 9 foot outdoor storage space. It has no direct street access that would allow for a dumpster that could be mechanically lifted. I currently have 4 96-gallon recycling cans that are overflowing by our scheduled pickup day. It should be noted that when I approached the DPW for additional recycling barrels, I was refused. This was not under the current leadership, by the way. This was a little while ago. The town should be throwing recycling barrels by the handful to anyone that can utilize them. However, I am now being discouraged from recycling with this proposed change in the trash policy. As a resident and business owner of this town, I pay taxes. Part of those taxes go towards the expense of providing certain services to the residents and businesses of this town. At some point, I will no longer have the town picking up my trash, but I will be paying the same amount in tax. Am I being prejudiced against for being a business owner? So what options are available to me as a business owner for my garbage pickup? For a short time, I was able to pay a local independent company to remove my curbside garbage 1 day a week in addition to the regular pickup by the town. The company will no longer do curbside pickup. The cost was prohibitive and the service was unreliable. I actually got a phone call from Job Lot one day asking why my trash was behind their building. They were dumping illegally. The cost was prohibitive, service was unreliable, and for clarification purposes, based upon my previous experience with independent curbside pickup haulers, I estimate that the annual expense for curbside trash removal for my business would be approximately $14,400 to $16,800 annually. And that's based upon previous actual expenses. That assumes that I am able to find a company that will remove my garbage. Currently, I am not able to find one. My business simply cannot absorb that additional expense. I have also contacted several independent trash haulers across the board. They will not do curbside trash removal. One solution that I thought would have been obvious to the administration would be simply to charge me a reasonable fee to continue my trash pickup. What town would be resistant to a business that is willing to pay for services that a majority of its citizens already have? I'm fully aware of the reasoning that the administration has behind the concept of not wanting to pick up trash from commercial entities. I am also aware of the fact that the town has granted permits for scores of businesses to operate without once considering how they will handle their waste. The town has also enabled many businesses to abuse the privilege of the town trash pickup. If a business has the ability to install a dumpster to have their garbage removed by an independent company, then they should do so. But what about those businesses like me that have no options? I assume that mixed-use properties and residential properties over 3 units will no longer have their garbage pickup. I assume that also applies to other small businesses within town. That should make for some lively debate once the word spreads. Prior to the implementation of a new trash pickup policy that has not been thoroughly thought through, I hope that we can open up a more constructive dialogue about the real and practical options that are available to us. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Stephen Brigidi. I'm the owner of the building that the Beehive is in. SJS Associates is the entity. As Chip stated, there are 5 of us in that unit. My concern is justification for the potential denial of us getting our trash removed. I mean, today, for example, I think all of us as residents received our tax bills. Some of us who have businesses, like myself, also received the tax bill. Our taxes go certainly to pay for services. Our education is probably primary and the first thing that we subsidize, that we contribute toward. We contribute toward government services. We contribute toward the police, the fire protection, and all these things. Trash removal, DPW, that's a part of it. I can't see any justification where businesses who pay these taxes, like ourselves, would be denied that. How can you justify denying a business that pays its fair share of taxes, like residents, not to receive the full services that we're entitled to? I don't consider it a perk or any special benefit. I just see it as a service that we're paying our fair share for. And that's really my main concern. Chip has already indicated we have limited space. We have virtually no land to speak of. That building was something I purchased a while ago, and it is functioning as best it can. I widened the best I could that stockade area at my own expense some time ago to accommodate the barrels. The success of the Beehive it's benefited the community. And one of the offshoots of that is, well, there's more trash that goes with it. So I've tried to best accommodate it. We once had a condenser for, I think it was the ice cream place, contained within the stockade at my own expense, and it was considerable. I had to move it to the roof to make room for more. It was actually a recycling bin to take care of the other tenants in the building. Right now, the trash in that area is primarily the Beehives, but for 4 months of the year, also Daily Scoop utilizes it. And the rest of us, well, we take the few little bags home. I know Jackie's Loft does that. Grassmere does that also. They're tax-paying, people as well as ourselves. And myself, we do more recycling anyway, paper. So we happily contribute to the recycling effort. And I commend Tim. You've certainly been behind the recycling effort, along with many others. And we're all trying to do that. We've spoken with Kevin. Kevin met with us this week, and we had a very good meeting. I know he wants to work with us, and he has some ideas. We've come to know this is the solution. That's what we're here for, to present our concerns. And as Chip said, others will be impacted by this. Commercial units supply to anyone with over 3 apartments, I think, in their building. I don't know whatever number of dwellings have 4, 5, or even more units. Some have double digits, I think, within town. Well, that's not my concern. I mean, that's something that you have to look at in terms of fairness across the board. We're not looking for any special consideration, but I think we've made our case fairly clear as best we can that we're limited. We're very limited as to what we have in terms of a facility, our own facility, to take care of the garbage. The other thing Chip didn't mention, but at least once a week, he takes the garbage out himself and brings it up to our service area up off Medicom. So he's already doing, the extra. When called upon, we'll do whatever extra. A while ago, Kevin and I, we go back some years in working out solutions. We had a sump pump that was dumping water, on the sidewalk. And I thought, well, we could just get it to the street. That might solve it. And talked to Ray Falco, and then Kevin and I, we worked out a solution at a cost of $1,800 to build an irrigation ditch and to put a PVC pipe below grade. That's what I call working together. That's what we've done, not just Kevin and I. I've worked with all of you in this room on, different efforts, and we need your help. We were, shocked to read in the Phoenix that all of a sudden, our trash would no longer be picked up. I don't believe it's fair. We pay our fair share of taxes. We're not asking for anything special, just for a continuation of the services that we invest in this town for. The other thing I want to mention, too, there are tenants in our building, like the Beehive, who are revenue producers. The meals tax, and I'm not sure, maybe Julie, are we still getting meals tax sent to the town, or has that been discontinued by the state? Okay. Well, part of that 8%, whatever fraction comes off that, these good people generate that. And in addition, it kind of goes without saying, but my humble little business, we pay for our furnishings tax. So too does Jackie, Daily Scoop, and Grassmere. So we're contributing, the revenue to the tax base here. We just want our trash picked up once a week. We'll work out any special problems as they come up, like Kevin and I have done before. And we look to your consideration to continue either the regular trash pickup or a solution that's going to benefit especially these good people who have been there now going on 14 years. Thank you for hearing me. Any questions? Be happy to answer as best I can, or certainly Chip can come back.
Thank you. So, a couple things. First, the conversation started about commercial trash, or non-pickup, I suppose, at a council meeting going back, I don't know, 3 or 4, if you'll allow me. I don't recall which one it was, but a very recent one. It was brought up by our colleague, Tim Sweeney, and it was brought up in his prerogative section, and it wasn't brought up in a way, it wasn't an agenda item. In all fairness to Tim, it was brought up as a prerogative section, which, if you don't know, at the end of the meeting, kind of our free thought area where we're able to thank people and things that have happened, or talk about specific issues that are upcoming. That's when Tim brought it up. It wasn't supposed to, I think it grew legs that it wasn't supposed to. Chip had mentioned a little bit earlier that there was no plan in place. I agree, because there wasn't supposed to be a plan in place. It was a first conversation of a larger part. This council has a good record on local issues to say, this is what we're going to do. It would need an agenda item. It would need conversation on it. So this was kind of a forced topic, I think, and I don't think it was done, in all due respect to Tim, there was no malice or intent in his conversation. I think it just grew legs from that. So just to be fair on that, I think you brought up some good points about your limited space. You're not alone with that limited space. I understand that some homework was done by the administrator. I know, Mr. Administrator, you were gone for the last couple of days, and Director McBride on some research you said you met with Kevin this week. Could you share some or all of what you found and talk about what might be a solution, if I may, either one of you, whatever you feel?
Sure, I'll start.
Thank you.
This matter was first looked at after our last conversation under Councilman Sweeney's prerogative. And again, there was not yet a plan in place. I fielded some telephone calls, including one from our local newspaper right after that. Why it's important to address and why I spoke about it under the prerogative section of the last council meeting was we are going to have to eventually deal with this issue in the fall when the automated recycling trucks come in. Again, every resident would get one 95-gallon recycling cart, one 95-gallon trash cart. And the purpose why we're doing that, it's much more efficient rather than a trash truck coming down with a route with 3 members of the DPW, 2 on the back and 1 driving. This piece of equipment will have 1 person in the cab, and this is a
Administrators being misdirected. We might have some technical difficulties here, so if you hear somebody speaking,
That is actually correct. The voice is back on, so I got the text on that.
There's a lot of people watching at home. That's why. So we know that. We know that. So Mr. Administrator,
what we found is
please.
most communities are going to automation. It's much safer. We have lower instances of workers' comp, and we can free those members of the DPW up for other projects. The question that, and the dilemma that we have, and we're looking for a solution, is who do we issue these to? Currently, we have some businesses that we pick up trash for, others we don't. So the question would be, are we going to expand our commercial trash pickup? Are we going to grandfather the existing? Or are we going to, at this point, eliminate commercial trash pickup and just pick up residential units? We did some research recently, and we verified that our cap, which is the amount of trash that we can bring up to the central landfill, is based on our residential population. Does not figure in the tonnage for commercial. So we're allowed so many tons per year. When we go over that amount, we are charged what's going up to $80 a ton. Currently, we pay $47. So every ton over is going to be $80 a ton. So it's still early. We haven't made a full determination yet. This is something that I'm going to ask the council to ultimately make a decision on with the good recommendation from the administrator with the DPW director's research. But we certainly appreciate the businesses and everything that they provide for us. But it's a matter of fairness to all the businesses and a fairness to all the taxpayers. And so at this point, I'd like Director McBride to add a few more details that he has for us.
Director.
If I may, just before, okay, just one quick question, Mr. Administrator. When are we actually stopping the pickup from the business? Have we, or are we going to, that obviously is to be determined, but have we stopped?
No, we have not stopped,
Oh, okay.
and we wouldn't stop if we elect to do that until the trucks arrive or the bins are all issued. There's a plan for each and every stop. And right now we're waiting on the timing of the arrival of the trucks. The town invested into 4 of these trucks, 2 for recycling and 2 for trash. In addition, we have the recycling bins and the recycling bins for trash and recycling. So those are further details that the director would have, and he's working with the manufacturers to get the equipment in. So it would be I anticipate late fall. When we hopefully can implement this. So there's nothing that's going to happen within the next month, 2 months, or even 3 months.
Okay.
There'll be plenty of notice. There'll be notification in the local newspaper. Each business will get a mailer explaining what the situation is. And up until this point, no decision has been made what's going to happen.
Okay. Director.
Thank you.
Okay, quickly to begin with, I think it's probably an opportune time for me to step back a little bit and give you an idea where we are with the trucks, as the town administrator said, because that's going to set somewhat of the timing for a lot of decisions that need to be made in the future. So where we are with the trucks, the 4 have just come out of manufacture, the chassis alone from Mack. They literally, like within the last couple of weeks, they're awaiting transport to the body manufacturer. Okay. From that point, it'll take about 90 days to build the bodies on the 4 trucks. And then they'll go back to Mack for the final work that needs to be done to ensure that their coordinated effort between the body and the Mack chassis and all the electronics that goes on it as a result of that. So there's a little bit of a downtime to do that, and then they'll be delivered to the town. So I'm looking at late this calendar year that we probably see the trucks on the ground here. With that being said, before you get in it, you don't just get in and start using it. So I have to train the drivers. So I need qualified manufacturers, drivers to come down and show us how to use those trucks, and then train a body of individuals, not just 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. We need to have multiple that can do that. Train those individuals to use the trucks. Then we'll implement, it's my thought at this time, well, before we implement anything, we need to get the bins on hand, the carts, if you will, both trash and recycling. So, as a matter of fact, the manufacturer of the carts called me today. I need to touch base with him when we start the clock on that. I don't want to have 20,000 bins or whatever stored someplace in town without a quick turnaround for distribution. So the timing of that's pretty critical. So you can see a lot of these things, there's a critical path to the whole process, and we're just getting to the point where some of these things are becoming clear. One of the other things that we did get a grant to purchase recycling bins, and that's plugged into this, so we got to work with them. We've signed a contract with them. Everything's good. The original timing was thought to be middle of next year. That's been moved up now. They're good with that. There's really no issues there, but that's all part of the process as well. So there's a lot of moving parts in this whole mechanism to get to the point where we actually go automated. When we go automated, we have to distribute all the carts to each individual residence. We have to find locations. The downtown areas are going to be very difficult when you put these 2 carts out for each residence in some of these smaller streets, and how we're going to do that. Because the truck needs to be able to get in, use the arm, and pick them up and dump them into the truck. There are some areas that I already anticipate the driver's going to have to get out and pull them out by hand and do it by hand so that he can grab it with the arm. So that's got to be worked out. And as I mentioned the other day during our meeting with Chip and Steve, that right now I don't know what I don't know yet. Because there's so many questions that need to be answered as we implement this process. The downtown area is problematic. The small streets, the one-way streets, parking on both sides of the road, et cetera, et cetera. Some of those things we got to work around. So we haven't gotten through that yet. But anyway, I just wanted to lay that out so you can get a better understanding of the time frame. And that dovetails back to the report that I had provided to the council in response to Mr. Brigidi and Mr. Cavallaro's petition to the council about this dropping of the commercial trash. I wasn't here when that was discussed at that meeting, so in my mind, it was very premature to get to that point, to raise the concerns that have been raised about dropping commercial trash altogether, and this is going to happen in a certain time frame. So I was a little bit taken back by that. But in any event, I provided some data to the council and the administrator relative to the escalating costs of solid waste disposal that we've been faced with since 2016. Rhode Island Resource Recovery provided me data, and I think that's in your packets. You can look at it. Back 2 pages of the response that I gave you has some data in
They
there.
don't have that yet.
Oh, they don't have it yet?
No.
Okay. So in any event, I can just kind of summarize because it gives us caps. In 2016, we had a solid waste cap of 6,900 tons.
Kevin, could you please stop for just a moment? You said a cap of 6,900. Can you just could you tell everybody what that actually means?
The cap means that the town of Bristol is given 6,900 tons of residential solid waste they can dispose of at the landfill in Johnston. Now, the way they come up with that cap is it's kind of a convoluted formula that they use, but essentially it's based on the town population. Not business population, but population. And then they have so much that they can use each year, so they distribute that to each one of the municipalities based on their population. Obviously, Providence gets more cap to utilize than the town of Bristol. So that's how it's scaled and distributed. So we're limited to that much amount. In 2016, it was 6,900 tons. In 17, it went to roughly 6,800 tons. However, in 18, it dropped to 6,788. We had a slight drop in the cap, which was kind of weird, and I couldn't really figure out why that happened. But in 2019, we were up to 7,075, and this coming year, we're up to 7,300 roughly. So you can see the cap goes up. Now, when we talk about the cap, when we take commercial solid waste as part of our collection, which is what we do it today in 2 ways. We pick it up curbside, like Chip's business and Mr. Brigidi's business, and we also take it in the front door of the transfer station. It all goes in to the transfer station, and we haul it to Resource Recovery, and they log it in as Bristol trash, so many tons. When we get to that magic number of the cap, once we go over that, our disposal fee this past year, it was $47 a ton for the residential solid waste. Once we went over that, it goes to $67 a ton that the town is charged to dispose of it. This coming year, the residential cap number will stay at $47 a ton, but the commercial rate goes to $80 a ton. So, that you can see where the escalation of dollars is. So if you remember 2 years ago, when we had a big jump in the commercial rate of disposal, we had implemented some fee structure changes townwide, a bunch of different things. One of them was the transfer station. We implemented a commercial sticker with a commercial rate. We also have a residential sticker with a residential rate, 2 different numbers. Did you have a question?
Well, not a question, but I just want to make a point that I think that's an important point, because while this plan has not been totally fleshed out, this wasn't the first time the issue of commercial trash has come up. And it's been up on our agenda on budget years and things for, 3, 4, 5 years? I mean, so
Right.
I think you're just getting to that point now.
Correct.
To discuss that. So I think it's important to elaborate a little bit on that.
It's important to note that historically, the town of Bristol has gone over our municipal solid waste cap in the month of May every year. Pretty much, you can count on it. So from
And
that
for
point on-
clarity, May and our fiscal year is through July, July
Right.
1st, the end of June.
Yes,
Correct.
our fiscal year runs 1 July to 30 June, so we're paying, say, 6 weeks of over the cap for disposal.
So everything
that
we
might-
throw out is a higher rate at
Correct.
that point. Thank you.
Because we lump it all together. that this commercial is not separated from. We did do that for about a period of 1 year, 2016, I think it was January of 2016, the council implemented a resolution to move to the commercial account, which I did, and then we had to do all that collection separately with separate trucks and separate manpower, and when I did a cost-benefit analysis, it was costing us more money than we were actually trying to save by separating out the commercial from the residential to save our cap. So we just kind of went back to the way we did business and just collected it all together. I point that out because at that point is really the only historic year that we have an idea of what we're collecting curbside each year. And I think it was like 150 tons of curbside per year. But we're still going about 1,000 tons of commercial every year, roughly. I mean, it goes up and down. When we instituted the new fees back in 2017, we did see a drop in the commercial volume, and I think that was relative to the new fees, making it probably more cost-benefit to a business to get a dumpster to do their business rather than haul it to the transfer station. I don't know. I just a food for thought for that one. But the other element of the compounding the commercial trash into the residential and it all coming into our cap, when we look at the municipal recycling rates, it's all counted in that total volume, so your recycling is included in there, and you figure out we're running about 24% of recycling rate, picked up in our bins town-wide, and that hasn't changed a whole lot. You'll see a peak month to month, like during the month of July, you'll see a peak, and that's expected because of the higher volume. We also have a higher volume of trash. I have to put 3 trucks out for a solid week post 4th of July to keep up. So those are kind of some of the background things. The other thing I'd like you to look at is I also provided some data because I felt it important that you have an understanding of what comes in the door at the transfer station and the fees that we collect to help us offset some of these exorbitant tipping fees. In FY17, we had a total of $52,700 roughly dollars that we collected in commercial fees.
Can you repeat that, please?
FY16 to 17 total, or 7/1. Actually, it's from July 1st of 16 to June 30th of 17, which is FY17. $52,762 is what we collected. The following year, fiscal year 18, about $82,165, and then last year $132,378. So the commercial coming in the door at the transfer station, we're kind of holding our own, paying for our going over the amount, the cap, to help us offset that, so it doesn't get pushed back on the taxpayer, for a higher rate when I come in budget time to operate the transfer station. Okay. So it is working. Now, keep in mind, we don't just pay that tipping fee. We have maintenance of vehicles, we have fuel costs, and we also have hauling costs because we pay a hauler to haul it.
And human beings.
Correct.
Right.
And then you have the labor costs. So I didn't break down those numbers. I just wanted you to have an idea what's coming in the door at the transfer station so that you can see that what we are doing is working. It's helping us offset our municipal solid waste costs.
So how, roughly, if you translate that into dollars, how much out of our budget is it going up every year?
That's a good question. I didn't
Okay.
Zero in on that,
No problem.
Councilman Sweeney. I mean, that's why I wanted you to take a look at what it costs us resource recovery, what we're generating revenue internally to try to help offset that.
Yep.
Again, it all gets lumped together, and it comes out of the municipal solid waste cap. I mean, it's considered solid waste, whether it's commercial or residential, when it gets to the transfer station. I mean, the resource recovery.
But Kevin, I mean, maybe...
Your mic's not on?
Maybe you just didn't get to it yet, but do you have the specifics of what it would cost if we... Like, I understand this situation. We've heard it explained to us many, many, many times. I think I've talked about it a lot in terms of recycling and how it impacts the tax rate, et cetera. But in these specific cases where there is no option for a dumpster, unless we want to take a parking space and put it right out front on Franklin Street, what are the options for these people? I mean, that's what we want to, hone in on.
And that's a great question, Councilwoman Perella. And unfortunately, you don't have these notes, but you'll get them. And I did throw that out there because what I did say earlier was that I felt that this was a little premature because we hadn't
Right.
we hadn't sifted out all of our courses of action and determined what's the best course of action. And certainly, we're not going to make a townwide policy change without some open discussion, as we are tonight, which concerned me that I thought we were a little bit ahead of where we should have been. And what we're thinking is, we're going to purchase, the town will purchase one cart for trash and one cart for recycling for our residences. And if they wish to purchase another trash cart for themselves, then they'll be given that option to do so. So that's, say 180, 190 gallons of trash capability there. What we were kicking around, and I say kicking around, this is one of those courses of action, was for the businesses that we collect today, they would be given the option to purchase one of each, one trash, one recycling, going forward. And if they wanted more recycling, and say some businesses wanted us to continue handling some of the larger recycling things, then I guess that's an option for us to consider, and we should certainly look at that, probably in a positive light, Again, the cost of the bins is an exorbitant amount for us to undertake this year. It's about $1.2 million, I think, if I remember correctly, of sunk costs right up front. So those are things that we need to consider. But to answer your question, I think, when we go one-on-one, that offers our smaller businesses the opportunity to certainly continue doing business the way we've done today. And then maybe there's an option for some of these other businesses that generate a lot more, i.e. the Beehive. And again, I did sit down with them this week. We had a great discussion. I provided them my notes so that, they could see the numbers that I had researched and come up with, so that, there's really nothing hidden here. And like I told them, there's no decision that's been etched in stone yet. We just started this dialogue, and that's why I wanted to map out the timeline that I'm looking at. We have a little bit of time to get through this to figure it out, although I'm going to need to know total numbers of carts pretty soon. But even if we underestimate, I can get more. I'm not too worried about that. You know what I'm saying? So I think there's opportunity to address some of the concerns that have been voiced. I think there's opportunity for us to take a look at how we're doing business today and how we'll do business in the trash collection and recycling collection tomorrow. And tomorrow being, I'm just going to say right at the end of this calendar year, even though I hate to get into this in the middle of the winter.
Right.
You know what I mean?
The same thing.
So,
I was thinking of that.
yeah, this is not going to be an easy undertaking, and I think we're going to need some, at least a little bit of flexibility to adjust as we go. And I've already mentioned to the town administrator that I think without question we're going to have to evaluate how we're doing business after the first 6 months and figure out if we need to tweak things, which I certainly anticipate we may need to do that. It may even be just more day-to-day stuff on the street as we collect the trash and recycling.
So, Director, did you reach out to private haulers? Chip had mentioned earlier that was a challenge.
Yeah,
Can you speak to that?
I sure did. What I did is I went to the Rhode Island Resource Recovery website, and on that website they have a list of A to Z haulers that they do business with or come in their gate, so to speak. They're approved to haul for resource recovery. And I just picked two that were local because it didn't make sense for me to contact somebody from Johnson or Smithfield at this point. So I picked two local, one from Rehoboth Waste Tech, and the second one was Miga from Seekonk. And I spoke with an individual at Waste Tech, and he said that, yeah, he would be interested in the commercial pickup. He said, send me your list of commercials, and I'll start marketing to them. And I said, well, we're not that far. I said, I'm just trying to figure out if you'd be amicable to coming in. Now, subsequent to that, Chip had called and spoke to the same individual that I did, and he said, well, we don't have a route there, so we're not really interested in doing any business. I don't know why. I didn't ask. He didn't convey that to me at the time. So there was a little bit of a discourse there. I called Miga, spoke with the marketing gentleman there who actually works with us in our 4th of July committee for Independence Park. He said, absolutely. He said, we have certain rates. He said, we'll work with them. He said, I can't give you a fixed rate because I don't know. It's all based on volume. And can the business use a dumpster? What size dumpster do they need? Do they need to use carts because they don't have space? How many do they need, and how often did I have to pick these up? So those were some of the questions he said, need to be answered. But I asked him, would he be willing to come down here and talk to us? He said, absolutely. So, I think to say there's no options is probably a bit drastic. To say that we have the options figured out certainly hasn't been clarified yet. But I think we certainly have things open to us. Yes?
Could I just ask another question on recycling? And if you could explain, so on the recycling, we're trying to get our rate up, and resource recovery used to, if I'm correct on this, so, they would have the money come back to the town, some sort of, money that they generated, and they'd split it by the communities. I don't believe that happens any longer. So when we were looking at, when Tim was first on the council and really trying to increase recycling rates, which maybe went up a little bit, maybe from like 20 or 22% to 24, as you just mentioned, it was sort of in our interest to have the businesses pick up at the businesses recycling, because it would offset, or add to what we might get back. And I'm not sure if you could take a minute and just explain where the recycling comes in, because is that still to our benefit to collect for maybe a less fee or something else to collect the recyclables? Because the waste haulers, most of them don't separate it out. So I mean, in the big picture, the environmental picture, it's not really beneficial.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that come in. There's state law that comes in, and there's two pieces to that refer towards, and recycling is part of that. You have the recycling rate, and according to the state law, we're supposed to be at 35%. And then there's the diversion rate, which means you take all these other things into consideration you're doing so that it's not going to the landfill.
Right.
For example, we have a huge metal recycling dumpster, and we go and get money for that metal. So that diverts it away from the landfill. And the requirement there is 50%. I forget our latest numbers. I'm going to say, 42 point something percent we're at a diversion rate, and I forget what the total recycling rate was. But to get back to your point, Councilman Perella, about the recycling we collect, and we do collect businesses recycling that we do not collect their trash, because they said, hey, if you want to pick up our recycling to offset and help out your townwide recycling rate, we would do that. And that was done years ago. We still continue to do that today, and that's why I mentioned a few minutes ago that we should probably take a look at doing that in the future with additional bins to commercial businesses that wish to continue.
So I just wanted to be clear on what your thoughts were, and I know none of this is in stone. So is it still beneficial to the town for the town to pick up the business recycling for the diversion aspects of it?
Yes, I believe it is. In my mind, I believe it is.
So when you were saying they could pick up additional, like if they went with, and then there's no plan right now, so I just want to be really clear to everybody.
These are courses of action.
Right. So if there was an idea that, I think it all needs to get fleshed out with you and the administrator and the parties involved, which are the businesses that don't have the option, like the food businesses that have a lot of trash, that don't really have the option for, to look at the cost and benefit. You would be charging for a cart for both recycling and for the trash, or just trash?
Well, at this point, I just put in my memo both.
Okay.
I mean, keep in mind that the carts are over $100 a piece at this point. Now, whether you want to say, all right, we'll purchase those, that's open for discussion. You know what I mean? Again, we can do whatever you feel is necessary.
Could I just ask one other quick question?
Sure.
I'll be quiet. I'll be quiet for a few minutes anyway. And that is, I'll try to be quiet for a few minutes anyway. Would it be... I'm going to guess that the conversation that you and Chip had with this hauler was different, because you were calling from the town, he was calling as an individual. And I think that this is going to have to be put together as the individual businesses, but if the town could help facilitate that, and I do think they would be best for those businesses that are impacted to go together on a plan in with a hauler.
Yeah,
But, I just think the whole thing needs to still be fleshed out. I think we're a long way from a final determination. And, would you be able to nail it down to, what the actual cost would be, in a month or in a next meeting or 2 meetings from now, to be able to say, this is what it would be if we did it, this is what it would be if us haulers did it. I've met with these 5 restaurants who don't have room, or 10 restaurants, whatever it is, who don't have room for a dumpster. This is what we need to do. Because the other businesses, they could either buy it or they can take the stuff home, as many people said they already do. The small little individual.
Yeah, that's why we had in there 1-and-1 for them, so we wouldn't leave them out.
Right.
And there was an option for them.
Right.
And that's why, we thought that was the best way to go. To get back to your point about the discussion with the hauler, one of the haulers that I talked to, and I explained to both of them what we were considering and how this evolved. And, the businesses were concerned about being left out, and we wanted to make sure that there was an option for them. And the one individual that I talked to at length, who has worked with our 4th of July committee, probably has a little better understanding of Bristol than the other hauler that I spoke with, and rightfully so, since he's done work, with us to some degree, understands, and then he comprehended the fact that, some going to need a dumpster, some can have a dumpster, others need carts, and if they have carts, do I have to pick them up more than once a week, so that we can keep up with their demand? So things like that. He said, I'd be more than happy to come down and have a workshop. He's already stated that to me. So, and then I know that Chip mentioned earlier, we had a sidebar discussion that he couldn't get a hold of this individual, so I'm going to try to reach out to him again tomorrow and kind of get the two connected. So I don't know what happened there, but anyway, we're working that out. Just so you know that, we're trying to work some things out offline to see where we go with this, to try to get some answers, So I think that there was never any intent to, in my mind, to leave anybody out in the cold with no options. I don't think that makes sense from any standpoint. And certainly, policies that, again, as I stated earlier, that are going to be town-wide, need open discussion with the council. And certainly, I talk to the town administrator every day. So it'll be a collective effort. And I think that's where we're headed. Hopefully, the meeting that I had with Mr. Brigidi and Mr. Cavallaro earlier this week, certainly will be the beginning. But there'll be other folks that'll have some questions, and I don't have a problem meeting with anybody to see if we can't get through this process. And again, the motivation is the total escalating cost of solid waste disposal. So we got to keep that in mind. We're trying to do things, obviously, so every year we're not seeing a change in the taxpayer rate relative to solid waste disposal. That's really the bottom line. If we can do that, then we've been successful.
Yeah, and what we're seeing is a growing cost to our taxpayer, and it's going to continue to be a heavy burden as we keep going over the cap further and further. I think for us to make any concrete decisions, I think we're going to need some data points, and like for me, I would need to know how many businesses we're picking up trash and recycling, how many are just recycling, how many are just one bin, and multiple bins to go from there, so we can kind of have some data points as to regard to what we're going to be affecting as we move forward with the plan. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of just to understand how it's going to affect the businesses moving forward, that sort of thing. And but honestly, and at the end of the day, we also, Kevin, are we the only town that picks up commercial? Is that true? Or
yeah, I probably should have mentioned that.
Block Island.
We are one of two.
Yeah.
It's Bristol and Block Island. They do their own soup to nuts there because of their landfill, and they don't transport.
So, a couple of takeaways. You've certainly gone through the dollars. We can see them escalating. I think a fair point was made about the challenges that exist, and they were born from years upon years of the town picking up trash. And I think that came from, I don't know when the landfill closed, but I want to say it was early 80s. Prior to that, there was no cap. There was no nothing. It was an easy thing just to pick it up and bury it up there. And that doesn't exist anymore. So I think the ease in this policy came from it was honestly, there was no consequences, and now there is. So I think we can come to a place, and it sounds like we all agree, that we'd like to see some options. It sounds like that Kevin and certainly the administrator in this council is willing to be a party to facilitating, as what was mentioned earlier, a conversation with MEGA, or whomever, to say maybe if 10 businesses get together and commit to using a particular vendor, there could be cost savings for everyone. I think that something that wasn't said that it's important to say is that it was mentioned about taxes, and you're absolutely right. All the business pay taxes, residents pay taxes. But that's a really important point, that all the business pay taxes. And there's a lot of businesses that were not picking up trash right now, that they have their own trash and they have their own expense to do that. So an effort to be fair and equitable. As I said in the beginning of my little conversation here is that we got here because there was opportunity. Those opportunities don't exist anymore, but I feel that we're all being quite amenable to find a solution. So, as Kevin has already mentioned, this is end-of-the-year implementation. I don't think it's too early to have these conversations. I think it's a very appropriate time, but nothing's going to get put in place until we have some more conversation. I agree with all the comments that were made, is that we need some dollars, we need some numbers, we need some impacts on this. We have a little bit of time to do that. For myself, I'm absolutely willing to look at if there is more, if it's one for every business, if a business wants to take advantage of, what's the cost? If it's multiple, what's the cost to the town, and how do we share that with those businesses? How do we convey those costs to them fairly, right? So I'm open to all these possibilities. I just want to be fair to the businesses that we're talking about right now and the ones that are not getting this service but yet paying exactly the same in taxes. So we have to be fair to everyone. So, does anybody else wanted to share anything? I think our next step may be to refer this, but obviously we're not ready yet.
No,
So,
I
go
just
ahead.
got one, and I'm sorry for doing this because it sounded to me like you just concluded. So
I put a nice bow on it.
Yeah,
You're
you
welcome.
totally did, and I was like, well, I still have just one question for Mr. McBride. In terms of, I was just thinking about the if we did go down the route where they might be able to purchase one of their own bins or something like that. Do you get a sense on the bins that we're purchasing? Is there a warranty on those bins, or how long do they last?
They last like 10 years is
Okay.
what we're looking at. The only thing that goes on them is either the lid or the wheels.
Okay.
And, what I'm looking at is trying to keep the bins the same, same type of bin. The wheels, you just order wheels and pop them back on if somebody's wheels go or the lid gets destroyed or what have you. But the bins themselves have been told by the manufacturer are 10-year bins. So we're looking at, a good investment for a good period of time. Obviously, if you toss them around, they last a lot longer, a lot less. But
Well, then, if you do the math, if it's a 10-year bin and it's about, well, let's just say it's $100. I know it's a little bit more than that. If it's $130, then it'd be $13 a year for 10 years. And that $13 a year for 10 years, if they're putting recycling in that, we might be able to make up for that with our, the benefit that we get from adding to the recycling in town. And so,
and I apologize to Councilwoman Perella for not answering your question, but the last time we did get a reimbursement on the recycling was 2015. For
So there is no
2015.
bonus.
So there is no more bonus.
It's just a requirement as opposed
Correct.
to
It is
a financial
state law
benefit.
requirement, and we don't see any benefit coming back to the town for money there. Obviously, if we meet the diversion rate and things like that, there are some incentives in there for us to do that.
okay. Thank you.
So the
So,
one
Ms.
last thing I just would want to say is that
You said you were going to be quiet.
For a few minutes.
I'm just
So, like whatever we do, and I also would ask to think of in the meetings that you're going to do, both of you, is like just the policies. In terms of if there's really, if we had to grandfather someone in because there literally is no space and there's no option, let's just say, hypothetically, to make sure that that is like very clear and how we would write that up. So that, what none of us want to see is businesses who already have trash haulers say, oh, well, it's going to save me money to go to the town. We don't want to take other businesses that already have, dumpsters that can do it. We just are trying to figure out what to do. I know there's lots of small businesses that are involved, and I'm not addressing those. I'm addressing the ones that have a lot of trash because of the restaurants and so forth, and literally don't have any space. It's absolutely true in Chip's case and in other people's cases. So I think we just really need to figure out how we can resolve that, and then we can also address the other businesses as what their options may be. Get a bin, bring the stuff home, whatever they do.
And that's, to your point, Councilwoman, when you asked me a couple of weeks ago about what about these very small businesses that don't generate a lot, how are we going to handle that? And so I think, we've addressed that with the one of each bin or cart, if you will, that allows them to do what they're doing today with minimal impact that I can tell.
They would buy something, but they wouldn't be paying for it to be picked up. Is that what you're saying?
Well, we haven't gotten that far as disposal,
We don't know,
but
right.
when you're talking large volume, I can show you some numbers that the Beehive is going into the transfer station. As he stated earlier, he goes in on a Monday to get rid of whatever weekend solid waste he's collected so that he can make it to collection day. He does that on his own. It's a significant amount, you know.
Well, I'm not talking about him. I'm talking about like Jackie's loft in the same building
Yeah.
that might have their coffee cups or their lunch wrappers from if they ran out to get a sandwich at the Beehive, or, you know,
Yep.
just a regular bag of trash, like maybe some stuff that they had tissue paper because they unwrapped some stuff to hang on hangers. I'm talking about like a bag of trash, like regular size, 13-gallon, you know.
Right.
Or less. So I think those are very different than the restaurants and what they generate, because obviously it's a lot. And I was looking at, like, during the concerts, there was a business downtown, and I was like, oh my God, look at all these trash bins. They were all recycling, though. And I said, wow, there were a lot. I think I took a picture. I mean, there were probably 10 of them out there, you know.
Yes, we had a problem with that. Again, there's non-compliance with the ordinance right there because they shouldn't have been out until it's collection day. And I can tell you that it wasn't their collection day. So that was a problem.
So, Kevin, what I'd like to do, if my colleagues are amenable, is refer this to the administrator and to you to come back to us with some. Before we do that, I think it's important that there's a timeline, an acceptable timeline, that this wouldn't be. So, for example, if we implement this, then you have 60 days to make a change or make a decision on that. I'm throwing 60 days out there, but obviously we're end of July right now, so we have August, September, October. You're talking the end. I'm thinking you mean December when you speak about these numbers. So there is quite a while, but that happens really fast. So what I'd like to make sure is that there's more than enough time that if we need to change an ordinance, that's a first and second reading, that's 6 weeks, right? So if there's something like that, I want to make sure there's enough time that, A, the businesses are duly noted, duly warned, whatever, but also that we have enough time to make these decisions and have enough time to implement them.
Yeah, if I can clarify for you that there is no ordinance. That was pulled from the town ordinance about a year or so ago, and it was sent back under my prerogative, under my direction to handle it through policies. So that there's no ordinance that dictates.
What I speak of is you mentioned a couple of times of the residential pickup of no more than a 30-gallon bin and no more than two. So that's a policy, not an ordinance. Thank you. So thanks for that clarity.
But
We should look at that.
it was an ordinance up till about, I want to say, year and a half ago. It was part of our ordinance under the solid waste section. It was removed out by the solicitor and put under, under the auspices of the Director of Public Works. So there are policies now.
So I'm not changing it.
So I guess,
But like I said earlier, no policy change that's going to affect town-wide would we do without some sort of open dialogue discussion and certainly enough time for reaction.
and this is my point, is that we should all, and I think we all are on the same page, that we want to make sure that once implemented, there's enough time to make adjustments. So you're not caught, for example, we make a decision and then 10 days later you have to find a private hauler. Obviously, we're not looking to do that. Nobody is. So please.
So, Mr. Chairman, I was just wondering if I could make a motion to
Please.
continue this to the September 28th meeting to kind of get an update on some of the data points that we talked about, and also in regards to maybe exploring an ordinance and just answering all those types of questions I think my colleagues have brought up tonight that we can explore, just to have a check-in to see where we can take the next steps.
Is there a
That seems-
second for discussion?
I would second it, but,
Okay.
and my discussion point is that too much time to, I mean, because we would not be making, we'd still have to make a determination of what we're going to do and then have enough time, as the chairman just said. I mean, would it be better, and we may have questions, and it would come back to the October meeting. I mean, would it be better to try to aim for the
Beginning of
early
September?
meeting?
You okay with that, Tim?
That's like
That's
about
fine.
6 weeks.
Yep.
Lou, when is that meeting, please? Do you know? So we'll go with that first meeting in September. Unless, do you have any objection to that? Kevin is telling me he will not be here in September.
The next meetings are August 7th, August 28th, September 18th, and October 9th.
Kevin, is it realistic and reasonable to think that the end of August would be a fair time to have some more conversation?
This September 18th.
I have a motion for September 18th. I just heard it from Tim.
So
Is there a
so
second?
moved, yeah, my original. Yeah.
But I also would like to just make sure that you're going to include in your discussions with the businesses involved, as many that want to be involved, particularly with the restaurant businesses. And I think you know who you're picking up all the trash for anyway. and come up and see what the prices would be, like who would be interested in working and collaborating together. You know, I mean, all the various options that they could have and help them facilitate that or get them together. They may not know who each one of them are. I mean, I'm guessing they might because it's a small town, but can you do that? You're looking at me like, no, you don't want to do that.
It's time.
How manageable
Time and schedule and
liability.
Well, at least
I'm not sure we can accomplish
at least an
that
initial
in
meeting.
that
I mean,
date.
to bring people together and lay out what you've sort of laid out here, because not everybody is aware of all of this.
Right.
You know.
We'll have to have the Chris work on that with me, set up a workshop or something. But,
That would seem appropriate. And I think what you
Yeah.
can do is, Mary's point's a great one, which is there's large users and there's not large users.
Right.
And maybe we can help with
Yeah,
facilitating
I just-
both of those.
I don't want to rush to an answer and still provide plenty of time for reaction time on their part, or decision-making time, I guess, is probably a better description of it. Again, implementation is not in the next quarter.
Would you think that you would? This is just running through my head. Do you think that you might put off the downtown piece until the spring? Because it seems like all the stuff is
I don't know.
snowbanked.
I might put the whole thing off until the spring, to be honest with you. Suppose the snow flies in November. It's like I'm just going to say we're not going to do this right
Yeah, you
now.
never know what the winter's gonna be.
It'll be hard enough to do, and the streets are dry, to compound it with snow removal piles and things like that. It won't go over well reception-wise. So to answer your question, I think we may be looking at the spring anyway, just based on truck delivery time, driver training time, and then bin delivery and distribution. We've got to get all those bins ordered, delivered to the town, and then distributed to every household.
And people have to find, if they have small lots like in downtown, you have to figure out where to put them.
Where to put them.
Okay,
Exactly.
so we had a motion and a second to continue this to September 18th. Am I correct with that? And there was a
Correct.
second.
Correct.
Was there anything else? I think we've covered this, and I'd like to move forward if we can, unless there's anything else.
He said 28th, but there is nobody else.
September 18th.
Yes.
Okay. So a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Thank you all for sharing this. Thank you, Kevin, for the amount of homework that you did on this, too.
The next item, Mr. Chairman, members of the Town Council, from the same two petitioners, is a request for a workshop to discuss the impending Silver Creek Bridge repair.
Welcome back.
Yeah, I haven't been very far away. Thank you for the discussion that just took place for the trash, and we look forward to September 18th. We look forward to working with Kevin, with Stephen, and all of you. Silver Creek. We all have concerns about that, there's no doubt. I don't want to get into particulars of that tonight. The point is to arrive at a potential timetable, I mean specifically a meeting where we can discuss in detail. We business owners, and I'm speaking collectively for the moment, we feel like we've been left out of the loop, similar to in terms of discussions about Silver Creek and what's about to take place in the summer of 2020. We are severely, incredibly concerned about the timetable that has been, I want to say, suggested and maybe implemented. We're very, very concerned about it. And we want to make recommendations along those lines. I've written directly to Governor Raimondo, asking her to, intervene. Several points I wanted to make, which I'm not going to go into any detail with. It's not for tonight. One of the things, and I think Mary and I discussed it, maybe with Aaron, we're able to meet with most of you. The historic stones that are at the foundation of this bridge. I'm a preservationist. I've served time for 8 years on historic district and I've done other work within the state. I care about anything historic, but I think in this case this is of minor importance, and that asking Governor Raimondo to consider a waiver, an exemption from the state Preservation Heritage Foundation, that these things may be removed and don't have to worry about them getting back. I think that might expedite whatever the timetable is going to be in getting the construction, reconstruction done. As I said a moment ago, we've been we were left out of the loop in any discussion about timetable, how it's going to impact us, and we want to get in the loop. We feel we're entitled to be in the loop because all of us, residents and business people alike, will be severely inconvenienced by any closure of Route 114. And the timetable of that might lessen here and there when it does happen. Fewer people in town at certain times of the year. Even our own movements maybe are more restrictive. So we need to, examine that. We couldn't make it clear enough, or more clear than how the summer months are just not going to work in terms of how it impacts the businesses, which is when they shore up their revenue to get them through the leaner months of the year. And I know you understand that. So we're looking for an opportunity to have lengthy discussions and urge all of you on the council, and it appears to me, honestly, that the council has been mostly passive. We want you to become more involved in this major issue of our time, and that you hear us business people. We don't feel that we're being self-centered. We don't feel that we're being unreasonable. Our livelihoods are at stake. And it's not just this shop or that shop, it's the economy of Bristol. A loss of revenue is going to be fewer dollars that Julie will see in terms of meals tax, fewer dollars that come to us by way of sales tax, through bed taxes, for tourism, all those things. So it's a reverberating impact, a ripple effect of sorts. One tenant of mine, Daily Scoop, he opens 4 months a year. From May, he's closed around Labor Day. If he's finished July 5th through the end of August, he's done. We'll never see him again. I don't want to lose him. I don't think you want to lose him. He needs those months. And he's not the only one. I know the Beehive needs it. Every restaurant needs those months. Portsides, they're kicking butt. They're doing great. And if people can't get to them, it's going to be a problem. I mean, Medicom, it crawls, and it's just going to be more problematic if that's our only option. I know the Wood Street extension. I'm not a fan of that. As an environmentalist with a long track record there, I opposed it when Halsey first presented that pet project of his, and I stated, in detail. That may be something to explore. We'd all love an alternative route, but obviously, there are very strict limitations on what's possible. And going through wetlands, I don't think is the best idea. A temporary bridge is something I'm asking Governor Raimondo to find the money. When Warren had to have a temporary bridge on 114, like Barrington, what happened simultaneously, the temporary bridges were put in place. Why not one for us? Oh, because it's not in the budget. Well, we need you, Stephen, to pressure the state to find the money in the budget. If it's $1.2 million, that number's come around. That $1.2 million might be money well spent as opposed to the loss of revenue from sales taxes and, the meals tax that's going to come into the town, especially a property tax and other taxes related or fees that our businesses presently pay. If they're out of business, they can't provide such revenue for the town. So it's really short-sighted. And if it is the state determining this so-called budget, short-sighted is a nice word for it. It's idiotic that we can't have a temporary bridge or something for a 20-foot span. So again, this is all stuff that we need to talk about. Will you allow us, not just business owners, but also residents, to have a workshop or a forum where we can really hash it all out? The DOT meeting was not the place. There was no room for discussion. We were dictated to. I had my own version of that I stated publicly. And again, let's do it like we're talking about, similar to the trash. Working together. I know, Nathan, you always talk about that. All of you do. And that's why we're here. We want to work with you. I know you care about this. Let's come together in a forum, set up another workshop. We've got some time. We've got to convince the DOT people we can't do it then. And if it's not going to be a temporary bridge, when is it going to be less impactful for our economy? We cannot starve our economy during the summer months of 2020. It will severely impact people, and some people will not come back from it. Will you please consider a forum, a workshop, part of a council meeting devoted to further discussion on this?
Tony? Mr. Chairman, if we are in agreement to a workshop, I think we best to reserve all our comments to that particular time, because if we engage in a discussion right now, folks who probably would like to be part of this discussion, they certainly not here, because since this is a request for a workshop not to engage in discussion, that's what I would propose at the present time.
Yeah, that's good.
I am in no opposition of having a workshop. I truly believe that if we were to go down that road, and we're going to find that out in just a moment here, then it needs to be, as you said, productive. So we need to talk about things that can actually be taken care of. You actually said something that kind of rang with me, and you said that it was frustrating with DOT. I'm going to finish the statement. Let me get it all the way to the end. And if DOT you're watching, let me get it all the way to the end. Yeah, it was frustrating. And I'm going to keep those comments. And Tony, you're absolutely right. We do first readings for ordinances, and we allow no discussion. Why? Because if you want to talk about it, you know the time to do that is at a second reading. I agree. It's a great point that these dialogues have to happen at a workshop. But to that end, frustrating on our end too. The timelines that we were given were, it's not going to happen this year, it's going to happen 2 years from now, wait, it's going to happen next year, no, it's going to happen. That's what happened. And if you recall, and this is really important to put on the record, the April meeting of this council was this town asking for that. Nobody asked us to do it. We, the administrator, came to this council and said, I'm frustrated. The council said, we're frustrated. Why don't we have information? That's why that was in front. That wasn't the businesses, all due respect. It wasn't a resident, all due respect. It was us frustrated. So we feel your frustration. You also mentioned the passiveness. Ask my wife how much time I've spent on this. Ask their wives and husbands how much time they spent. The opposite of passive would be a fair assessment. Now, if you feel nothing has changed on that, I get that part of it. We do too. We have to work with DOT. That doesn't mean we have to be prostrate to DOT, but we do have to work with them. So we need to have a relationship now and moving forward. You pointed out Medicom. Medicom is in large part from former Rep. Marshall, former Councilman Ed Stewart, and myself, and this council and administrator. I pushed for it, and so did my colleagues, to get that turning lane. DOT took the next step. We asked them to do it, but then they expanded the turning lane out to help us offset the traffic in the summertime. So there is a lot of efforts. I know it doesn't feel like it's all the way to the end, but I've gone on long enough. The point was, should we have a workshop? I think there's a lot of opportunity to talk about what kind of advertising we can do for next year. Councilman Perella and I spoke recently, and she mentioned that, and we've all talked about this, about we have a tourism budget. It's about $28,000. It's a lot of money, but it is through fiscal year July of next year, which is kind of past the time that we need to make some decisions here. This council has the possibility of adjusting those numbers, and I'm giving the credit to Councilman Perella because she deserves it, of putting that forward. And maybe we need to look at what we do for adjustments now, even though the fiscal year is gone, so we can facilitate, whether it's programs, events, advertising. This is really important, though. Those ideas need to come from the businesses, and I don't mean solely from the businesses, but we need to know what you need. If we do extra concerts, does that help? You know what I mean? And don't answer the question. My point was just to say what works best. I'm amenable to it. I know my colleagues are too. I know everyone sitting here is. So I'm okay with a workshop if everybody else is.
Yeah,
What
absolutely.
a key part of that, though, is that if we're going to see if we can, if there's adjustments to be made, our reps and senators need to be there too,
I agree.
because we have push. But we have push, like my uncle has push on my finances, right? He'll suggest something, but ultimately it's my decision. This is a DOT and state. That's not me passing the buck. It's the reality.
Yeah, you're right.
State
And I know you weren't at some of the meetings that we were at the state. The anger that came out of us that you're not seeing right now about what was being done or not being done from the administrator, from Director McBride, There he is over there. He's hiding because I'm pointing him out. No, I'm kidding. It was anger from us. So, and I know you've never heard that before, but I'm not a big fan of sharing. I can't change those things. We tried on that. We're willing to try again on those. But if we have no choices, I think our time needs to be spent on what can we do to offset those impacts as much as possible. And I know my colleagues and I are absolutely amenable to do that. So why don't we do this, and I'm not cutting anybody off if anybody else wants to share, but why don't we ask the clerk, I'm sorry, Lou, to schedule a workshop with our reps and senators and representation from the state DOT to say what possibilities. But key here is that this will not, we want to go in with how can we make it better, not I don't like. Now, it's okay to say I don't like, but let's not spend any time on what we don't like. Let's spend our time on seeing what we can do to improve it.
Be constructive. I agree totally.
Thank you. So is everybody amenable to that? And again, I'm not cutting anybody off. Does anybody want to share anything?
No, I'm very amenable to the workshop. I would just like to make sure that workshop includes a topic for signage. I think that's going to be incredibly important through this whole process. As long as whoever talks to it talks about the plan, where it's going to be placed, and make sure our residents are included on where the signage is going to go, as well as the businesses. So I think that's my point.
I said I was
all
going
your
to be
good
mean
points.
to DOT. I'm also going to be nice. Is that once the decision was made by them, they came out in force with their project directors, with their what they want to do, how they want to do it, how quickly they want to do it, reaching out with Commerce RI. I didn't say these things were perfect solutions, but once they said yes, and I'm not sticking up for them, but I have to be fair, once they said this is what we're doing, then they came out in force. And that's what we were looking for all along, was that information to share with not only our colleagues, but with you and the residents. So we have a motion. Can I have a motion to refer this to the clerk to schedule that along with our reps and senators?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Thank you.
Any potential date in mind?
We're going to work that through the clerk. This will not be out way too long. This needs to be done now.
Soon, yes.
Because advertising and all the things that have already been mentioned need to start now, not January. So,
Thank you for your time. Appreciate
Thank you,
it.
Steve.
Thank you.
Mr. Clerk, if you have any paper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Town Council. The next item is item F3. This is the petition of Lynn Shore on behalf of the Bristol Merchants Association, requests council permission and accommodations to hold State Street Fair and Arts Festival on September 14th, 2019. You have recommendations provided by the Town Administrator, Fire Chief, and Interim Chief of Police.
Welcome, Lynn.
Good evening.
This is your 30-second commercial. Please do it.
I already have one of those.
Go ahead. Go ahead, do it.
Lynn Shaw, formerly of Harbor Bath and Body. I am here this evening representing the Bristol Merchants Association and respectfully requesting permission to hold the second annual State Street Fair and Arts Festival on Lower Thames Street on September 14th from 10 to 5. We had this event last year, and it was awesome.
Great, yeah.
We had tons of people,
Agreed.
a lot of local people who came out and bought, shopped, dined, a lot of positive comments, not only on our Facebook page, but at the festival itself, and people who stated they would love to see more of these festivals, or at least one every year. So we're back to ask to have permission to do this again. We need permission to shut down State Street around 8 o'clock in the morning on Saturday. So this past year, we showed up at 8 and there were cars everywhere on the street, but maybe kind of my fault. I forgot to ask for signage for the night before so people wouldn't park overnight. And so it was a little bit hectic, but we made it through. So we would ask for that, for the signs to be put up. Also, we do need police detail, which I've already spoken to Brian a couple days ago, and he had said that they were on board with 2 cruisers and a police officer for that day. So really nothing's changed. We do have local restaurants this year that are going to join in, so there will be no food trucks. I know that was a point that I had made in my letter. initially, but we already have 4 restaurants who are looking forward to
Excellent.
being included, as well as we have Rogers Free Library, again, that will do a children's table like last year, and some nonprofits, Bristol Christmas Festival, the Food Pantry. They'll also have booths there as well.
Nice.
Great.
I interrupted Tim. He was going to make a motion, I think.
Yeah, I was going to make a motion. Lynn, I was able to go last year, and it was so much fun. I was actually surprised at all the people. I mean, it was great. Great turnout for the first year, and I think Elaine Way had some typewriters out or something. Really neat. I thought that was cool. And anyway, I just thought it was what a fun event.
You.
So with that, I will make a motion to approve the State Street Fair and Art Festival on September 14th from 10 a.m. to 5.
Correct, and we do have a rain date for the 15th in case of...
For the rain date of the 15th?
The 15th.
For the rain date of the 15th. That's my motion, Chairman.
So we have a motion and a second to approve. Is there any other discussion?
No, I'm just happy that you're still involved with this. It was really good last year.
Thank
I'm glad
you.
it came back because you used to have it a long time ago, and it's really a good event.
Well, I love our town. I love my local businesses as well, and I want to stay on board as a volunteer and help out in any way that I can.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you.
We have a motion and a
Thank you,
second
Lynn.
to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item, Mr. Chairman, members of the Town Council, is the Town Council appointment section of the agenda. The first item is for the Historic District Commission with term to expire in July of 2022. You have the interest for reappointment from Mary C. Millard, 620 Hope Street, and also new interest from Al Thornton, 8 Sunnyside Avenue.
I'd move to reappoint Mary Millard.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to reappoint Mary Millard. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
You also have a auxiliary member for the Historic District Commission with term to expire also in July of 2022. Manuel Sonny Furtado, 148 High Street, currently serving, would like to be reappointed.
Make a motion to appoint Sonny Furtado.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to reappoint Sonny Furtado. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
The next matter is item G1C, and this is the resignation of the Harbor Commission member Richard Scott Medeiros.
Motion to accept Richard Medeiros' resignation with a letter of thanks.
Second.
There's a motion and a second, and I would assume that also includes, we'll go out to advertise for that position being open? Mr. Clerk?
Yeah, we do. The council's typical process is that it would look at its auxiliary and
Right, that's true.
other members.
Perfect.
But we will definitely advertise the vacancy.
Can you also just check with our, well, maybe just it's automatic, but I mean, usually check with the alternative members, the alternates, because
We
one of them
can.
I think may not
Some
want to.
have not
Right.
wished to be full members, yes.
Yeah, because I'm looking at this list, I'm thinking one would not want to be,
Right.
and one maybe. Thank you.
We'll do that checking.
We have a motion and a second to accept the resignation. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Item G1D, this is the Recreation Board, and you have the resignation of Michelle Machena.
Make a motion to accept with regret and send a letter of thank you.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to accept the resignation. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
The next item is item G1F, and this is Rogers Free Library Board of Trustees. You have the resignation of Fausto Anguilla, Esquire.
What about E, Lou, about the Prevention Coalition?
Oh, I'm sorry. Got to get new glasses. The G1E is the Bristol Prevention Coalition. You have a recommended list of membership provided by the coalition. Thank you, Councilwoman Perella.
I just move we approve the list as submitted by the coalition.
I'll second the motion.
There's a motion and a second to approve the submitted list. Is there any discussion?
Just a quick question. When we say remove, are those folks resigning, or they just simply just cease to provide the service they opt not to?
That I can't tell you.
Okay.
Traditionally, the coalition, or what used to be called the Substance Abuse Task Force, would provide us with a list of membership.
Okay.
Mr. Administrator? You look like you were going to...
Yeah, those are 2 police officers on that list. I was surprised that they were being removed, so I did speak to one of them, and they do not attend that often, but he had no interest of being removed from it. So if you...
How about this? How about if we, and tell me if my colleagues are amenable to this, how about if we approved the additions and we get clarity on the
that's a good
subtractions?
way
Is
to
everybody
say it.
okay with that?
Yeah, that's a good way to say it.
Okay. So, Mary,
Yes.
can you amend that motion?
Yes.
Perfect. Is
I
there a
just did.
second?
Second?
Lou, that's what I mean.
Perfect. That's what I mean. What did he
That's what I
say?
meant. That's what I
Okay.
meant.
So we have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
And now the Rogers Free Library Board of Trustees, that's sub-item F, and you have the resignation of Fausto Anguilla Esquire.
Motion to accept Fausto Anguilla's resignation with a letter of thanks.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to accept the letter of resignation. Is there any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Then we have the Zoning Board of Review. This is the second alternate position. There's currently a vacancy with term to expire in March of 2021. You have 2 applicants, both interviewed by the council, Michael T. Burns of 244 Metacom Avenue and Elaine White of 11 Constitution Street.
What's this council's pleasure?
I move, is it nominate or move Elaine White to serve on that? To appoint, yeah.
Yeah, second.
There's a motion and a second to appoint Elaine White. Is there any discussion? I'll add 2 seconds. Mike Burns was one of the 2 people who interviewed, and in a very strange interview process, Mike said, "Don't vote for me, vote for Elaine." So I needed to point that out, number 1. And number 2, said that both applicants did a great job. Like, honestly, most of the applicants that we get do a great job with this. And I just wanted that to be said out loud because it was a tough choice that Mike made for us. We appreciate that, and so thank you, Mike. So we have a motion and a second to appoint Elaine. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, Elaine.
And finally, sub-item H, this is the Personnel Board. There's a vacancy with term to expire in December of 2020. You have the application of Russell F. O'Connell of 1382 Hope Street.
We just need
Motion to set up an interview.
We have a motion to set an interview. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Let me just write it on here.
So this is the part where I always say thank you to the boards and commissions for the efforts and energies that you put in. If you were not appointed, and I actually pointed out that Mike wasn't, right? But Al Thornton was another one. If you're interested in any open position, there's a few here. Please reach out to us, and we will be setting up interviews. We're happy to talk with you again about another board or commission. And again, thank you for what you do. Mr. Clerk.
The next item is item I-1, and this is from the Director of Community Development requesting a executive session. I'm assuming the council would like to take that up at the
Please.
conclusion of the public agenda.
Thank you.
Second item is item I-2 from the Town Administrator regarding an update on Wood Street Extension.
Mr. Administrator.
Thank you. The purpose of this item is to brief the council on a meeting we had with our wetland biologist on July 10th. The reason why he came here during the discussions regarding the Silver Creek Bridge, we wanted to make sure we explored every opportunity for detours and alternate routes. At that point in time, we reached out to Scott Hobson from Caputo and Wick, who's familiar with many of our other projects in town. He was familiar with the Wood Street Extension. We met with him. We had representation from Save Bristol Harbor at the meeting. And what we learned, and Diane Williamson has further details, but again, in brief, what he provided to us for information was that something else has developed since the last project. Last time this was looked at, there were concerns about the wetlands. Those concerns still exist today. However, now we have global sea rise. So the way he looked at it with his engineers was that the average bridge, which is what we would have to build over the wetlands, it would be a raised roadway on concrete pylons over the wetland. And the average bridge is at about a 50-year lifespan, and the predictions right now and calculations through URI are that area will be inundated with between 3 and 5 feet of sea rise. So this bridge would have to be 3 to 5 feet off of the existing grade. And then the dollar amount came in, and it's upwards to about $18 million. So now that was just one
Mr.
figure.
Administrator, did you just say $18 million?
But again, this was made public in full transparency, so that there weren't any surprises that we were working in the cloak of darkness, but we were trying every option to keep traffic moving through town. We thought that this could potentially be an opportunity. I'm not saying it still isn't an opportunity. We're trying to set up a pre-application with CRMC and look for federal funding and maybe other alternatives. But the cost in this new issue, global sea rise, that wasn't something I was expecting. Going into this, we thought it was the wetlands, and we were planning, even at our meeting with Scott Hobson and Save Bristol Harbor, we were talking about an ascent to maintain more native species and wildlife in that area, to maintain it, and make an improvement, a scenic byway, and it really sounds good. But the global sea rise, it sounds like, if the studies are accurate from URI, the same studies that the Division of Planning, Rhode Island Division of Planning, require us to abide by for projects. It appears that we need to have a bridge, and it's about 850 feet long at this point with that type of sea rise. So it's a very expensive project without federal funding. I know the town of Bristol wouldn't be able to afford something like that. So we'll continue to do some diligence on it, but there are some major obstacles.
So a couple things. That number's scary.
Yes.
So a couple things. First, I've had a couple of residents, probably all, we've had a couple of residents both reach out in both positive and negative. It seems to go most of the way like this. I'm going to sound like a broken record because we talked about this earlier, but none of this obviously would happen without lots of conversation, without lots of, well, I guess you can call them workshops or dialogues, and for and against, and how does it affect me, and all of that. So I had no doubt this is so in the beginning, very much like the trash conversation that we were having earlier. This is so in the beginning of a conversation. But Diane Williamson gave me an example this morning that was apropos. Tanyard Brook Phase 1 and Phase 2 was millions of dollars. It's almost done. How did we do it? We used town dollars, but we got a lot of federal grants, so you never know. Now, just because you get the money doesn't mean we should do it? No, but I think we should explore it, and instead of the dialogue that we had about Silver Creek, why isn't it being raised up? Because you'd have to raise everything up. Is this a real way of looking at sea level? Yes, it is. So I think it's wonderful to explore it. I know we don't have $18 million, but Senator Reid has been really kind to us. Maybe we could ask him if he's got $17 million lying around someplace we can work. I joke, but my point is, not Diane's earlier example, is that we think we can't until we start asking some questions about this, and there may be an opportunity, but it doesn't go anywhere without lots of dialogue. And I say one resident in particular wrote me a long email explaining their frustration, concern is probably a better way to put that. That person and everybody else who has concerns or positives would be part of the dialogue, or be able to be part of the dialogue if they so choose. Colleagues?
Well, my experience with some of the citizens has been a little bit different. I've heard a little bit more on the negative side, and so one of the things that it kind of compelled me to do was to start looking at some of the statutes that kind of govern these development projects and everything like that. And so it took me to the Freshwater Wetland Act that was passed by the Rhode Island State Legislature, and I was going through the rulemaking documents of that through the CRMC website, because I believe that they would have the jurisdictional authority over any kind of approval with that, because it's under the CRMC maps. And I was looking at the pre-application cost, and it was my understanding on the basis of the table that they had that it was a $20,000 pre-application cost.
I think and I'll double check this, but I believe that municipalities are exempt from CRMC filing
Okay.
fees. I know we do have to pay to DEM, but I believe we're exempt from CRMC.
Okay.
Well, that's good news.
Yeah.
So
And-
17.9 million left to go, right?
But to the point of the permitting agencies, and to quote Kevin from his earlier conversation on the trash, we don't know what we don't know, and we're doing some very early exploration. Things have changed in the 20 years since this was discussed previously. One of the things that has changed is the sea level rise conversation, and now the state is requiring, when you get a CRMC permit, that you look at sea level rise as part of your decision making. It impacts, obviously, buildings and private developments, maybe more so, but the town's transportation network is very vulnerable to sea level rise. There's been studies that statewide planning, Hope Street in Bristol is ranked as the #1 most vulnerable road to sea level rise. So it's a conversation that we need to have. And the sort of the planning geek in me was kind of excited that people were looking at the storm tools mapping for some of these scenarios to see what will happen in Bristol, because it's a hard conversation to have. So we're starting to get there with just the wrapping our heads around what does that look like for the geography of town and so forth. And as everyone has said, we're not there yet with any solution or anything, but it's just to kind of get to the point of having these dialogues. And CRMC has done a lot to promote town decision-making in consideration of some of these future scenarios. So it's a lot we have to learn, and we have to get there. But as Steve said, we really need to look at alternatives for the future. It's a long range. It's a very long range future project.
To add on to, it's not just the pre-application process and everything like that kind of concerned me, and that dollar amount, which we may be exempt from. But there's a whole lot of other factors that were wrapped up in that, and some of those factors were that I was looking at the law, and it's a very rigorous law. It's a law that seems like the burden is really on any kind of developer to demonstrate beyond any kind of reasonable doubt that you're not going to be having some substantial impact on these wetlands, which are really important areas of biodiversity, and that's one of the things that we've discovered since the 1990s. We know that even more now, that they're very important areas. And so it looks like the general, or the director of the general, Director McBride has something to say.
I was just going to add in that, we talk about federal funding to support some of these processes. That's great, but one of the things that may trigger is an environmental impact statement. Yeah. And, that is a very lengthy process to go through. I don't know if anybody's been through that or participated in writing one of those, but that is a very detailed, lengthy process. Well, so, for the federal money, it's great, but you still have to go through all of those federal wickets to get there.
Well, and I'll also add to that those EISs can be very easily litigated, too. And then they can get stalled up in the courts and everything like that. And I know that after reading the law, the Freshwater Wetlands Act, it was very generous to people that live close to some of these areas, and the effect that any kind of development might have on flooding in their houses and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think any hopes of a fast-track project relative to that, probably more realistic that it's not going to happen.
Mary?
Does that mean it won't get built or we couldn't do it? No, but it's just a very lengthy process.
Yeah, I just want to make one comment in relation to that, and I reserve my editorial comment about how the state should follow their own laws sometimes, because we've had a lot of flooding due to them giving permits for building on wetlands.
Well put.
But my comment is that this has, for better or worse, in the paper, become like an alternate for Silver Creek and an alternate plan. And obviously, even if we had the money right this minute, there is no way it could get, even the approvals, there's no way it could be constructed and done in time for next summer. So I just want to make sure people understand that this is not an alternative. It may have started out to look at that as can you do something quick? But if we're going to go that route, it's just to alleviate the traffic, I think, on 114 and 136. As we looked at back in the late 80s, early 90s, and that is no way could impact the traffic flow for the Silver Creek project. So just to make that really, really clear.
Yeah.
Good point.
And just my feelings on it is that I really just don't think it's a good project to pursue. And the reason being, it's going to tear up Rhode Island wetlands. It's going to tear up national wetlands. Also, it goes through a body of water. I mean, it's great to explore, but the reality is I just think it has such impact on our environment in town that it's going to be a real big problem. You know, I look at Tanyard Brook, for example. We probably built houses where they shouldn't have been built, and now we had to go through and we had to put the piping and the drainage and all that stuff, and I think it's almost like a Tanyard Brook squared in a way if we kind of went down this avenue. I think it's fine to explore, and I think it's good. It brings out different thoughts and different avenues and designs, but long and the short of it, I just think it's a sticky project to go down. And also in the 1990s, I believe this governing body, voted that it wasn't a good project to move forward on. So that's just my feelings on it.
Tony?
You know, it's interesting.
Why not, right?
Yes, why not? Why not? No, well, I was a little surprised, honestly, to see this had resurrected. But interesting enough, one day I was coming home on Medicum Avenue, and I turned down Woodlawn, and there was actually somebody in front of me that had turned there as well. So I just, out of curiosity, I just said, let me just follow this vehicle. Believe it or not, they went right across, okay, Naomi, up across, Broad Common, up by Toyota, and out and take a left onto Medicom. So it was interesting to see that some folks have figured out the inside circle, to get around. Was that you?
No.
No, okay.
That was me this morning, coming from the Beehive Pantry. I did go down.
But I was, that day, I was just very curious. I just said, let me just follow this to see, because I had heard from some of the residents in the area that was happening. You know, folks were coming down, then just cross over through the middle of town and, getting back up on Medicom no longer Toyota, Tupelo, there onto Medicom. So it's interesting to see that. I'm not so sure what the impact would be on Naomi, and wetlands, obviously, that's already brought up, but more so on Naomi. What would be the impact to their neighborhood? That would certainly concern me big time,
But I think that's the point, which is, I think it's a explore. If there's no opportunity for next step, stop. If there is an opportunity for next step, take a look at it. We don't know what we don't know. And if it makes no sense, then we stop.
I mean, it's a complicated project in the 90s, and it's even more complicated now with everything else that we know. So, I mean, I think if it was a good, I think if it was a doable project, it would have been done.
$18 million complicated.
Yeah.
Mr. Administrator?
What was the cost then? $2 million?
I just don't think it's a project that should be shelved. If you want to stop a project, there are plenty of bureaucracies out there to stop a project, and we're not going to let that get in our way. If it's valuable to the safety and the economy of our downtown area, one thing that you got to remember is Hope Street's going to flood. It's going to happen. If these calculations are right that all scientists are telling us that we have to abide by, we're going to need another route to our downtown. So to say that the obstacles are too unsurmountable, I don't agree with that. I think we have to face the facts of what we're dealing with. The world has changed since 1990. Several years ago, there was consideration of closing the north leg of the 4th of July parade. A lot of that had to do with safety. If we're looking for federal support for this project, I think we could probably get their attention. Homeland Security is very concerned about our 4th of July parade. Thank God we got through it again, and it was terrific, and we're not going to stop changing our ways. But that would provide us another route to continue the parade for the next 30, 40 years on Hope Street, a north-south route. Right now we have one. And you can see what we had to block off this year on Washington Street, Sherry Avenue. We had to block off quite a few streets. That was a requirement for an evacuation route. So there are a lot of moving parts other than it's wetlands and we can't disturb it. There's remediations. There's raising the roadbed. There's improving the area. It's choked by phragmites right now, and it's not that healthy of an area. We were looking to improve it. And again, I'll say it, there's a lot of bureaucracy, and we can certainly find it. You don't have to go very far to find the obstacles. But if it's important to the town, if it's important to our businesses and the future of our town, I think we should keep it as an ongoing project. And it was good to know that we got answers. And we know it's not going to be 1 or 2 years of permitting. We know it's going to be 5 years of permitting, if that's something we need. But I think things are going to develop with sea rise, and we're going to have to make some decisions.
I, for one, am happy to consider it. I think I've said it, and I'll say it again. We don't know what we don't know right now. I don't think there's a yes or no. There's not enough information to anything else but express the concerns, express the support, and take a look at what opportunities are there. So,
just very quickly, and not trying to get ahead of things, but and not being an engineer, but where would we start? Would we come back all the way to Bayview in order to accommodate the sea rise?
It would be
because right now, Gutierrez at the corner of not Gutierrez, at the corner of Washington,
Perry?
corner of Bayview and Perry.
Yeah.
That is a pond. It just turns into a large pond there. So we probably would have to consider going all the way back to Bayview if we're going to actually meet the criteria there we're talking about, the sea rise.
Well, I think that's one of
But that's
many points
getting
that
ahead of the thing, right?
is it possible. If it isn't, and honestly, it's not a. I think we're so. If that's where we want to get to, we can't even see it at this moment, except that if we can't get there unless we point in a direction, very much like Babe Ruth at the right field wall, right? You can't do it unless you point, right? So, anyway, so if this was an update, thank you. This would be a receive and file. Can I have a motion to that effect unless there's other dialogue?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
The next item, Mr. Chairman and members of the Town Council, is item J1. This is a bid 912 for the Communications Campaign Services for the HES Overdose Prevention Program. You have one bid received from RDW Group, 125 Holden Street, Providence, Rhode Island, in the amount of $44,058.
Mr. Administrator, can you remind us where these, or Julie, Treasurer, can you remind us where these funds would come from, this $44,000, if it was bid?
Yes, this is part of the Health Equity Zone funds, so this does not come out of the general fund.
Thank you. What's this council's pleasure?
Refer to the town administrator to act in the best interest of the town.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Next item is from the Treasurer regarding a recommendation for the use of premiums from the road repair program.
Hi, Julie.
Hello. So, as you know, we recently issued bonds in the amount of about $5.3 million for various projects, about half of which was for roads and sidewalks, but also open space drainage, Independence Park and seawall repairs, plus quite a bit of DPW equipment and some sewer fund equipment also. So when we issue bonds, we do that through a competitive sale. And we received 9 bids, which was a lot. It was a big response, and the interest rates it was a really tight spread, so they were ranging from 2.388 to 2.665%. When in a market where the interest rates are that competitive and that low, the bidders will also offer like a bonus, cash bonus, and it's over and above what you're borrowing, and so we did very well in this sale, and in this case we received about $561,000. So the law says that we can use that money for cost of issuance to lower the borrowing or for projects that are allowable under the bond document. So because the interest rates are low, we have projects that we know we'll be borrowing for next year, like the roads. I think it's a good time to use those premiums towards our road program primarily. Because there's a small allocation of the premium that's going to go to the sewer department, we'll also take a very small part of that premium if the council chooses to allow use for sewer equipment, which Jose is always in need of. So I would ask that the council approve the use of this bond premium for cost of issuance, roads, and sewer equipment.
What's this council's pleasure?
I would accept Julie's recommendation
Yeah.
and approve that, and I think it's great that we got that little bonus.
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah,
that is
definitely.
money. That's
Yeah,
gonna help.
very
Well
nice.
put.
to add to like a project. Yeah.
Well put.
I'll second that with a question. Is this going to be dedicated to any particular project?
The 560,000?
Yes.
Yeah, so about 60,000 is cost of issuance, and I think the sewer equipment was about 50 or 60,000, and then all the rest will go to roads.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We have a motion and a second to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Thank you, Julie.
The next item, Mr. Chairman, members of the Town Council, is item K1, and this is the periodic report provided by Alan Klepper of the Bristol County Water Authority.
Motion to receive and file.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Following
Thank you.
is L1, which is another executive session for the conclusion of the public agenda, and then we come to the individual council member agenda items, beginning with the chairman.
I started the meeting by saying nice job on the 4th of July to all that were part of it, including the 4th of July committee and all of the people that I've already mentioned, including Interim Chief Burke and to your men and women of your department. I had a conversation with Michelle Martins this morning in regards to a few things that happened with 4th of July, but I'm going to defer. I actually spoke with Tony a little bit earlier, and he had the same thought as I did, so I'm going to refer to Tony or defer to Tony so he can bring it up, but simply had to do with blankets and chairs and the times that those go out. So again, nice job. Thank you to all of the residents and the visitors. It is just magical, and I know I say this every year, I'm going to say it again. It's like the Charlie Brown Christmas special where the hands go like this, and you have a beautiful tree, Mr. DPW Director, because it's even the afternoon, and it's the evening, and it's beautiful. But I also, hats off to all the people who watch the parade, because if you look, the plastic bags are used. Every once in a while, you see somebody who said, I don't feel like using it, and they leave their bottle or whatever on the ground, water bottle. But a lot of people are using that. It's wonderful to see that. And it gives me, I like to say that most people are good most of the time. And I really believe that. I think we have a wonderful community. We have something to be very proud of. And the 4th of July is just one of many things that we get to say that we're Bristolians, we live in Bristol, and we live in a beautiful place. Thanks, everybody.
Mr. Sweeney.
I just want to say what an honor it was to march in the parade. It was a beautiful day with my colleagues. What fun we had. Town administrator, I saw you high-fiving quite a lot of people. It was great. But everybody was having a great time. I have a lot of relatives from out of state, from different states, and they come into Bristol and they just say, what a wonderful, wonderful place, and what a lucky place we have. So I just want to say it was an honor, and I'm looking forward to next year. Thank you. Have a good night.
Mr. Texera.
Likewise, thank you. Thank you for. I had a visitor from Warwick. This was their first time. Actually, it was a family and they could not believe how quickly people did pick up after themselves. Not only that, as they left, they give me a call back, and it says, it seemed like you didn't have a parade in town, so, good job overall. To the point that Mr. Chairman had alluded to, this is about the ordinance, and obviously we're all aware of what the ordinance and the reason as to how the ordinance came about. Well, this year I was very disappointed. The day before, this is the 3rd, at 7:30 I went to breakfast, and as I traveled through Hope Street, there were 3 different locations that had staked out areas already at 7:30 on the 3rd. Hopefully that's not a pattern that's going to continue to happen, and because then we revert back to what used to happen before in the reason for the ordinance. But there was definitely 3 locations, and there's no need to mention addresses, but just to bring awareness that was noted on the 3rd at 7:30 in the morning. The day of the 4th, 10 of 2, I was awakened by this shuffle up my street, And I said, maybe I'm seeing things. So I took a peek out. Sure enough, people actually were carrying chairs to the parade route at 10 of 2 this in the morning. So I said, well, it's a little too early. Let me go back to bed. 3:30, I heard the same thing. At that point in time, I says, well, I'm going to have to get up at this point and walk up there and reserve some spot. So I did go up, and as I do every year, I stand in there and wait until people start taking the space. Then eventually I lay out the stuff. Well, I'll tell you, at 3:30, you would not believe the amount of people that were up on High Street. I said, well, I used to get up at 4 o'clock. I thought it was too early. 4:30, I'm sorry, then 4 o'clock, 3:30 now. So, something that we need to address very seriously. And I can tell you that 5 of my neighbors, 2 of them were not able to get a spot on that parade route this year, and they were not very happy. And this is Tony. I says, well, I'll bring it up under my prerogative and just make, everybody aware of the fact that this is becoming an issue. So, whatever we need to do to enforce it, we need to.
May I just say one thing about that? And so every 4th, 3rd of July, I like to take a ride at 11:30, 12, just to see what's going on downtown mostly, and along Thames Street and everything. And I went on the route, and it wasn't even midnight, just to your point. And I would say there were at least 15, if not more, people, not only with chairs, actually putting little tents up and starting to stake out their spot. And that was before midnight on both High Street and Hope. So, it is getting so everybody kind of, what I hear from people is everybody kind of knows that no one's enforcing the 5 o'clock. And so everybody, the local residents, in your case, feel like I've got to put my stuff out. And if that's the case, then, and that's what's going to happen, then the people who live right there should be able to put their chairs out the night before, so at least they can get some sleep, And I think that it's unfortunate because it is people that look like they were going to be staying out all night, which is what an issue we used to have in the past. And so I can't say whether that was the case or not, but it looked like that was what was going to be happening in a couple of locations. So, like I said, I would say there were at least 15 spots that had more than just chairs out, that actually had people and other things, ready and already starting to wait. And that was around 10 of 12. Sorry.
Well, that's it. I don't have anything else. Thank you.
Sorry.
Ms. Perella.
Well, I just thank you for letting me just add to that so that you would, because it is getting to be a problem, and there's a lot of issues around the 4th of July. People make comments about the chairs, all day long, or can they keep them overnight down at the concerts as well? And so I'm not sure how we all address that, if it's the 4th of July committee to come in with recommendations, or if it's just the council or the administrator to come in with recommendations. I'm not really sure, but I think people are getting a little frustrated. The only question that I have, and I do want to thank everyone, and I'm sure police, fire, rescue breathe a big sigh of relief when that parade is over, because it is you all do a wonderful job, and it is challenging to manage all these people and to make sure everybody is safe. And I think about it when Bristol's parade is over. I think about it later at night when I see New York fireworks over and Capitol fireworks over, that there was no major incident. And I think that it is a challenge, and it's a challenge to have everybody under control. And I'm not sure. I don't have to hear it tonight, but I'd just be curious about what it was like without the, because I did not go down to the fireworks or the concert, but now that we don't have the drum corps competition, the one year that the drum corps was on the 5th, it was absolutely crazy down on at Independence Park. And then we had the drum corps, but it was in Cranston, so people did divert over. By that point, I never went down. I just went on the State Street dock. This year I didn't go down at all. But I do worry about that space in that situation, maybe even more so than the parade. But one thing I noticed, and people are incredibly clean. I've lived in the route this area my whole life, and it was amazing always that DPW could get it cleaned up. But now a lot of stuff does get thrown away. And I was wondering if there are available, if it would be too costly to get clear-colored clear colored bags, so like a blue tint, so that we could have for recycling, so people know. So there's no options. Everybody's throwing, usually have 2 bags on each tree, on the trees or on the poles, and everybody throws everything in there. And I know there's nothing we can, not a lot we can do, and that will probably happen, but I do think people are so accustomed to seeing like a blue bin that if there was like a clear blue bag, I'm pretty sure a lot of recyclables would go in there and the trash would go in the other.
We can certainly look into that. Yeah. I'll see if we can purchase those. We purchased those bags ahead of time so
Right.
that we're stocked, but
Right.
we'll look into that and see what we can do
Yeah.
and go from there.
Okay, thank you.
What's that?
I'm all set, yes.
Mr. Lay?
Well, it was a very interesting experience walking on that parade route for the first time. It was very surreal, and it really meant a lot to me to be able to participate in an activity like that. And I would love to sit up here and thank all the agencies and everything like that, but I'm afraid that I would leave anybody out. But I do got to say that DPW crew has, they really put in a lot of work during that week. And the next morning, when you wake up on July 5th, it's like almost like nothing has happened in the town because it is just clean. And so I got to give those guys a lot of credit. And it's not like they're working in 70-degree conditions or anything like that. These guys have been on trucks all week picking up trash and everything like that, and they're on the 5th of July doing this.
Yeah, I will actually, on behalf of the entire council, pass along your thanks to the entire crew. It's a lot of things that don't go seen is the fact that they put in some very, very long days. They're supporting the police department for security measures, and that goes unseen and unsaid, as it should be. But when it comes July 5th, they're picking trash the very next morning, which is after an all-nighter cleaning up the town. So, I will pass along your thanks, and I think to hear it from you folks goes a long way when they get tired and trying to keep motivated to keep going. And they did certainly do a great job. And I have to say that the bags work.
Oh, they do.
That whole process works. It has certainly cut the amount of debris within the parade route down quite a bit. I know you can talk to some of the guys that have been on the staff for many, many years, and they'll tell you some horror stories.
I remember hearing the raking, like you guys, they used to come and rake like all the trash.
Yeah, that's the only way they could get it is rake it out to the street and then
Yeah.
pick it up with either a front-end loader or
Yeah.
the sweepers.
Yeah.
So I will be certain to pass along your thanks tomorrow to the staff.
I hope there's been some well-deserved vacations for some of those guys, and I imagine that they don't come until after the 4th of July. So.
Yeah, they're rolling in on it right now.
Right.
Well, even the Hattie Brown winner had to work.
Yes, he did.
I just have one more thing to add. One of the things that I've always kind of been a little bit concerned about is the marketing of the Bristol ferry from Newport to Bristol. And I know we're really lucky that RIDOT advocated for us to get this route. The town administrator, I read about his advocacy in the Public Utility Commission opinion that granted C Street this route. And obviously there's been all these other town councilmen and women who've done a lot of work to make sure that we get that route. And I've always said we can't drop the ball on this because especially with the Silver Creek Bridge project on the horizon, this is an alternative means of transportation for people to get into Bristol. And so with that being said, one of the things that I've always thought would be a good way of marketing the route better is if the highway signs that the DOT has that say Newport Ferry, if a supplemental sign is added to the bottom of those signs that says that there's stops in Bristol. And it's something that I've been kind of working with them on. And on May 21st, the DOT came here to the Maritime Center to give us a presentation. And they said, we'll do anything to work with you guys. Nothing is too small. And I asked them, I said, well, how about modifying the signs, the highway signs, just so that people know that there's a stop in Bristol? There's a lot of people that don't know that yet. And they said, you know what? And I have it in my notes. They said that would be relatively easy. Well, 3 days later, the enthusiasm tapered off a little bit because on May 24th, I emailed one of the people at DOT, because I had their contact information. I said, well, how's the work going on these signs? And they said, well, hold on, we'll get back to you. June 14th, I had to follow up. Hey, how are things going with the signs? I had a constituent that asked me about it. And then I got an email that day from the Office of Transit, the administrator, and they said, we've already been working with Bristol. We've already marketed this route. There's been enough that's already been done here. So not much longer after that, I asked my state representatives and my state senators and everybody like that. So I emailed them and I said, hey, look, I'm worried that this route is not being marketed, but I think we're asking for a relatively reasonable addition here to the signs to market this route. And then I heard back from the director of government relations from RIDOT, who again said, we've already marketed this route. We've already did enough to market this route. And then they said we worked with the local businesses. We worked with the Merchants Association. We worked with everybody on this already. And so I went down to the merchants in the last few days, and I said, have they been working with you? Has RIDOT been working with you on this issue? And they said no. And so one of the things we did was we just put together a petition right here. We got all the downtown merchants, almost all of them, signed on here, asking just to add a supplemental sign to the DOT highway signs. And the reason why I think it's so important is because it's a temporary route. And whether this route is extended or not is going to depend upon the ridership that we have this year. And so that's something that really concerns me a lot to not see the marketing. And so I hope that the DOT will, maybe next Monday, I know that there's some meetings that will come up. I hope that we'll consider putting a little bit more pressure on them to add to those signs. Thank you.
Aaron, can I just say one thing? You talking about like hard signs or the electronic? Because I have seen it on the electronic sign going into Providence, usually towards the weekend.
Yep.
That they, pardon me?
Yep, and I will
Seen them on the
I will say-
overheads going into South County as well.
And one going in. I see
and I
that
will
all
say-
the time about the Bristol route.
Yep. And they've done, I will say, credit where credit is due. They do a good job of actually putting them on the DOT digital signs when they're not competing with the drunk driving campaigns and everything like that. So, yeah, I agree with you. They do a really good job of that, but that's not going to be year-round either.
Where are the other signs? Where are the other-
There's one at the airport. There's several of them in the east side of Providence. So they direct passengers to parking.
Oh, yeah.
There's right on 95 South. As you're coming in on 195, they have a Newport seasonal ferry. I just don't think it would take that much to add that there's with stops in Bristol. If they want to take down the sign any other time, it's very easy for them to do it. So.
Right.
What's that? Town Administrator, agenda items?
Thank you. 4th of July was certainly spectacular, and I'm glad all of you reminded me of it and how special the parade was. I saw a lot of happy people. I didn't hear a lot of complaining people, and I think there were a lot of people that were grateful to be in this country, the greatest country in the world, I believe, and they certainly demonstrated it. One of the things that I remember is there were a lot of first 4th of Julys that I saw along the route. I know all of you probably saw it also. A lot of moms and dads were holding babies up, and I thought that was a really good symbol. And so I was real happy with the way 4th of July went this year. There was law and order, but not an overbearance of it. And I think as a result, we only had an unprecedented one arrest related to the 4th of July, and that was on the 3rd of July. One arrest with all that was going on is remarkable. So thank you to the police department, our fire department, DPW. And Harbor Festival, it's coming up on the 10th, August 10th. And I also want to welcome Dr. Jonathan Bryce, our new interim superintendent of schools. That was recently announced, and I'm looking forward, very much looking forward to working with him. And that's all I have. Good night, and enjoy the rest of the summer.
Motion would be to convene into executive session pursuant to 4246-5A5 relative lease of town property, the landfill solar project, and 4246-5A2 litigation regarding Rhode Island DEM.
So move.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor? Is there anybody else in favor? Aye. Okay. Any opposed? Thank you. Good night, everyone.